Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lizard Brains podcast. I'm your host, DJ Allison Drini. I'm joined by my co-host, Tom O'Gorman. Tom, how's it going?
I'm good, DJ, because I'm joined with a guest today.
Oh,
Try
yeah?
to give him an introduction. I've been working on my intros, guys. You ready?
All right, let's hear it.
So, our guest today is a national championship winning SCCA car owner and team owner, a former NASA series lead, has been a club racer in multiple series, but is also a professional spotter for everything from MX5 Cup and Daytona and GTD all the way up to Mazda prototypes, Indy 500. You name it, he works with it and has made a pretty good name for himself in especially that professional spotting world. So we thought, being the week between the 24 hours of Daytona and the Roar, what better time to have Sam Myers on? Hi, Sam.
Hey, Tom.
How'd I do?
You did good, buddy.
Awesome.
A plus.
How's it going down there? Is it hopefully warmer than where we're sitting?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's cool by Daytona standards, but better than like I know up home in Ohio. It's pretty cold.
I saw on the
True. Well,
on the TV today in the break room that New Orleans is getting a blizzard.
Yeah, we're not getting that. It's mid 50s and gets down around 40 at night. But for the weekend, for the 24-hour, it'll be back up in the 60s by day and around 50 overnight Saturday night. So manageable for sure. Not what we had 3 years ago when it was in the 30s and just freezing.
Has Daytona ever had snow during the 24-hour? They must have at some point, right?
Not in the 15 years that I've been coming here, but yeah, like I said, back in 22, which ironically enough was the year that we won the 24-hour. It was frigid, but no snow, thankfully.
Only the
yeah, I'm
fastest.
trying to remember what year I was there. It might have been the year that I first went, and you took me up to the spotter stand and stuff. That it was really cold. Like I was
Yeah, that
lucky.
could have been. That was probably
18 for
19.
me.
I'm get 18 or 19.
Yep.
Yeah,
One of
18
those
would have been.
years.
I was there with Hart when they had their NSX running in
Oh,
GTD
yeah.
Pro or GTD.
So before we get into all that stuff that I previously mentioned, how did you find your way into motorsports? Because this is a common thing I end up when I ask a friend to be on, and I realize I don't know where they came from with all their motorsports journey. I just know what they do now.
Is
So how long have
a
you been
fun.
doing all this stuff?
So, back in 2000 and 2001, my stepdad and I built a food concession trailer out of an old enclosed 20-foot trailer. And the goal there was his dream was to go run the NASCAR circuit serving breakfast. Well, didn't get to that level, but in 2020 or 2002, our first year, we did get the spectator events at Mid Ohio Sports Car Course. So worked all those events, included
Oh,
ALMS, IndyCar, the bike events, and the last one of the year was the SCCA National Championship runoffs. So SCCA had one of their box trucks over in the infield where we were at, and I checked it out throughout the weekend and was like, "Hey, this." I originally wanted to get into autocrossing as something to do, being a sports guy growing up, not necessarily a car guy, pretty competitive, and then so I started looking around for different car to autocross and stuff, and ended up finding an old uh, EF Civic Hatch that was an ITC car, and got it, and found it for wasn't that much more to get into club racing. So 2003 went and did one event up at Nelson Ledges, and then 2004 went back to Nelson Ledges and did a double school, and weekend later I was or 2 weekends later I was over at Putnam Park doing my first club race with NASA.
how did you know about all that so quickly? First of all, so you started racing because you had a food truck.
Right. Yep.
That's wild.
It
That
is.
I feel
that's
like
that's quite the origin story.
the way this
Uh,
works is so complex. So many people have such a hard time finding events, and you just described a 2-year timeline where you went from, "Oh, we got this food truck at the races," to, "I have a race car and I'm racing."
yeah. It that's what it went to. So I did that
Whoa.
and had that car for 2.5 years and then sold it and went up to an ITA EF Civic Hatch and ran it for what was that? Got it in '05 and no, had that in '06 and then it got wrecked. That was a anybody who knows club racing from knows Tom Fowler from OPM. And the Civic hatch I bought was an old yellow and blue Civic hatch that had run a ton of ARC Enduros with a bunch of different drivers and pretty popular old chassis. And it met its demise at Mid Ohio in August of '06. And so, in a really quick turnaround, a buddy of mine had a old CRX that was caged but nothing in it. Got it from him, swapped almost everything over from the Civic hatch to the CRX, and 1 month after wrecking it, I was back running the first ever NASA championships at Mid Ohio in Honda Challenge 4. So it was pretty fun.
So hold on, we got to go back to Tom's question of, so you're doing the food truck thing, and then you're
Yep.
like, I want to participate. How did you even find events?
Just hopped online, found had done knew some different people through NASA, a couple of different buddies of mine that I met at the racetrack, and just was searching out events I could go run at. Actually, um, did an event or two as a volunteer flagger at a corner station with NASA because they had a thing where you could volunteer and then get some track time from it. So that was my way to do entry fees at the time and work my way up. And so I did that. We also worked False Grid, met a lot of great people doing that.
Okay, so
And yeah, so just going through the website, knowing people, and trying to find events the best way I could.
you were interested in the space. The food truck probably introduced you to a couple people. You'd hang out with people, so you were kind of like already in the in. Because I think like one of the biggest issues with amateur motorsports, especially, is how do you get started? I was trying to sign up for a specific event at Summit Point, and I know where to look, and I was having a hard time finding it like a couple weeks ago. So
Mm-hmm.
it's always a
You
little
got to figure
tricky.
this was 22, 23 years ago as well. I don't think things could have been a little simpler back then as far as that goes. Technology wasn't as great, but in its simplicity, it might have made it a little easier than how populated things are nowadays.
That makes sense because there's not as many organizations.
Correct.
Yeah,
You
Yeah.
basically
I
had
would have
two. You had two to choose from.
I would have thought that would have made it harder, but yeah, I guess especially because it sounds like you threw yourself at it everywhere you could figure out that it.
I did. I mean, I really didn't do. I My goal was always to do club racing with NASA at the time. Um, going to go going through the SCCA double school was just a much faster process to get that license than it was to go through a year full of
Yeah.
HPDs and everything else.
Yep. Yep. I wonder how
That's what
many.
DJ did too.
Yeah, that's what I did. I just went to a comp school and then had my provisional and then did a couple GLTC races and then sent that to SCCA and then got my full comp. So,
Yep,
yep. I was like, cool. I was racing right away.
that's what the goal was.
So then fill in the blank because we met in early teens, maybe 2014, 15 when I started club racing. So there's about a decade between everything you just said to when I met you. And at the time that I met you, you were either at the end of driving your own cars or no longer driving and just kind of helping people or renting your cars.
Yep.
So how long of the period that you just described were you driving up to? And how like I wasn't doing NASA events all the time, so I don't know if you were still racing the white car or not.
Yeah, I was still. I ran. So I ran with NASA all the way through. My last race was in 2015. Did a few SCA club races at the time as well, but in '06, it was either '06 or '07, I also stepped up to become the Honda Challenge Series leader for NASA. So trying
Hmm.
to bring other racers in to compete in that series and things of that nature. That also, um, you know, it, at that same time, I also started renting cars, so I didn't drive as much. So I had one Civic or one CRX, got a second one to use as a rental, and when people were, it really worked well because as people would inquire about wanting to get into Honda Challenge and maybe if they want to do an arrive and drive, that would also lead it right into maybe, hey, I've got a car for you to rent and can provide trackside support and do all that. So I did that for had both those cars for '06 and '07. Um, did got one of the guys I rented from or rented to in '07. He ended up buying a car, and I ended up housing and prepping it, and was my first full time customer in a white Civic hatch, and that they ended up getting a second hatch, which we built for them, and they ended up running both of those in in '09, and that led to our first NASA National Championship in 2011 with Brian Max, who was one of the team owners. And at the time, it was a PTE class. So for those couple of years, I was, you know, built cars, provided, did all the prep at my shop, and then provided trackside support, transportation to and from, all that stuff. So, as well as also still trying to be a series director and work a full time job and having a wife and two kids.
You did all this so much faster than I realized. Dude, you did it all so quick. That's within like 6 years. You were in charge of everything, renting cars, racing them.
Yep. So yeah, and then
Damn.
2010, I drove again with a co-driver. He owned the car. I prepped it, did some driving, which was good, and then just realized that was too much. So took a step back, and that was when I got the black CRX, and got it in 2011. Raced it a little bit when I could, a few events, and then 2012, kind of the same deal. But then that was when that car won its first championship with NASA in that same PTE class with my good buddy Eric Waddell driving it. He had a Civic Hatch that he was running and had an issue at the national championship. So since I was 30 minutes away from Mid Ohio, I said, "Hey, I've got my car right here. You've driven it previously. Take this and go win." And that's exactly what he did. So it was great to see him
Sometimes
get his
people
victory behind the wheel, and
Yeah, sometimes people
yeah.
borrow like buddies like parts and stuff. Like I've borrowed speed sensors from cars in the paddock before and stuff like this, but this dude literally borrowed a whole car.
Yep. Yep, car's
I
sitting
need
here, hop in, move
I
the
need
seat,
friends
here's a
like
different
Sam.
seat, here's a smaller seat, and go win the race, and that's what he did. So, yeah, and then, car kinda stayed in that same configuration from 12, which is basically essentially an ITA car slash H4 car, um, and then late 2015, um, decided, "Hey, I think I wanna make this into a H2 slash STL car," and spent that winter, got a B16 swap, and got it put together. And then finally, into 2016, at Mid Ohio, had my good buddy Greg Vandersloot get behind the wheel at Mid Ohio for its maiden voyage, and worked pretty well. He won both races and won the overall on both classes. And then it was about a month or somewhere between 2 weeks and a month later, Tom actually came and drove the car at NC Corvette Museum.
Yep.
And yeah, that was a great time. That was when we first got into a few of the issues with the car that we got to sort out and get ready, and then that led into 2017 and working with Adam Roberts and our run to an SCCA national championship at Indy.
I just posted a picture of the cars from around the 2012-13 range all the way up to that race that Adam Roberts won the championship in. Over Eric Catil, I might say. Suck it, Eric. I'm kidding. But, uh,
Poor
yeah,
Eric.
to this day, that's the only car I've ever rented, I believe. I have, like, a firm no rental policy, but I had just won my B-Spec, championship, and it was my birthday weekend, and I was excited. You and I had already been talking because I still have a goal to run the runoffs one time, and you and I had been talking about doing it back in the day at that point.
Mhm.
And I was like, "You know what? Sam's giving me a screaming deal. I'm just gonna rent the car for the weekend." And I had a blast. I also drank way too much the night before. I did my only hungover race I've ever done and did not enjoy that. But
That
anyway,
sounds miserable. A hungover race? That sounds terrible.
dude, it was it
That
was a bad
that
choice,
also
but it
sounds
was my
very
birthday and I
stressful.
did still have fun.
Yeah, that also sounds stressful.
Oh, to be 23 or 4 again. But, the in that window of time, you must have also started working, uh, professionally with some of these teams doing spotting and going to Daytona and stuff.
Yeah, so kind of where that went with there was a bunch of club racers that would get together in Columbus once a week on a Wednesday night and have a team night, and we'd um, work on other people's cars. and whatnot, and then go hang out. And through that, Jeff Mistowy, who now with IMSA, one of their series directors or technical directors, he was a driver and kind of did that with us. Well, that's how he knew Tom Lepper, who's from out in California, and Tom, longtime front wheel drive guy, ended up hooking up with a guy, and they were running Chevy Cobalts in Grand Am ST back when it was still Grand Am Cup. So that's how I got into pro racing as an over the wall fueler. Did a couple of events in '05, and then I think I did 6 or 7 in '08, 7, 8, 9, and then being down there in 2010, I was there with Tom for the what is now the Michelin Challenge race on Friday, and a good buddy of mine, Jay Chapman, had taken over as the team manager at Team Salem. He was running the Mazda RX-8 three rotors
Oh yeah.
at in GT at the time, and I said, "Hey, I'm here. What can I do to help out?" Handed me a radio and a headset, and you can go spot for us. So went, and that was my first venture into spotting in 2010 at the at Daytona 24 hour. Went for about 6.5 hours straight, and had done about all I could do in one stint, and they were happy. And then basically every year after that, they as long as they were there, they had me back. I think in 2012 they
What
flew. I wasn't an over the wall crew guy, so they flew me down just to spot.
so what
So yeah,
what were your takeaways in that first ever spotting thing? Because I'm trying to put myself in that position, and I'm trying to imagine, like, because I don't want to talk too much, I don't want to talk too little. Like, how do you know what the driver wants? Like,
you basically, what I did is I said, if I was driving that car, what type of information would I want? So having a driving background myself, that obviously helped, especially on road course stuff, and then just kind of worked my way through it from there. They were very appreciative, said I did a great job, and it just kind of built from there. But yeah, just as a GT car, and you're out there with it was DPs at the time, just being a big set of eyeballs and a set of mirrors for them, and letting them know what's going on around them was the big thing.
so would you like make calls like the DP's gonna meet you before the bus stop or stuff like that? Is
No,
that
it's
like,
typically in car. It was always in car lengths. It's with a DP, you're typically topping 40 car lengths back,
yeah, gotcha.
and then it's 20 and 10, and then it's left side, right side, and once they're clear, it's little things like that. Or obviously, if there's an incident on track, you know, you don't want to tell them too. If they're exiting the bus stop and the incident's over in turn 5, you're not going to let them know till they get at least through turn 3, because
Yeah.
there's useless information that could be done at that time. But yeah, just little stuff like that that is good information for a driver to know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so I was introduced to this whole topic when I went to Daytona. Like you said, like I said, you'd brought me up to the spotter stand and you were describing to me what you have to do, and it blew my mind. I was like, oh my god, because literally my experience with spotting up to that point had been I never have one, and iRacing tells me where cars are when they're next to me. Like we're talking 2018, I didn't know what that meant. Like a spotter was just a person, like NASCAR, three wide, go low, blah blah. And when you brought me up there, I was like, oh, it's so different than I thought. So let's do like a role play. I'm a new driver for Ford Performance in the number 64 GTD Pro car, and I'm coming in with Sam as my spotter, and I don't know what I want, or all the drivers are new together. Like, just give me a rundown maybe of what a typical like. Here are my expectations as the spotter to help the driver, and maybe even like, do you tell them what you do, or
Yeah,
they make
basically, I'll
it back?
send out. So, like this year, with when we went to the BOP test in November, working with 3 new drivers in the 64 car, just through an email or through our WhatsApp team chat, it's just laying down some basics with the drivers and the team. Okay, here's the terminology that I use for other classes. A GTP car is, for me, it was always, in previous years, it was always a P1. Multimatic uses the term hyper because a lot of the WEC drivers from over in Europe, they're hypercars. So we just condense that to hyper. An LMP2 car is a P2. A GTD Pro car is a Pro car, and a straight GTD car is a GT car. So you've got your 4 class designations so that way, as best you can, you're going to let that driver know what's approaching them, and what class it's in, especially the difference between the two prototypes.
Yeah, because the
Um,
closing speeds would be wildly different.
correct.
Yeah.
And then from that, it's always, left side, right side. Like I said, with the hypercars, you're going to start at about 40 car lengths back and work your way in. With the P2s, you're going to start at 20 back and you work your way in. The GTD Pros and the straight GTD cars, they're going to have an idea, and it's not that critical, at least not till you get down to the last hour of the race, what those are because they're all the same GT3 spec.
Okay. I wanna paint a picture, and then I want you to spot for me, Sam. You ready?
Okay. Yeah.
Oh boy, oh boy.
Okay. I I'm I'm coming out of turn 6, and there's a flock of 4 GTD cars, behind me, and they're looking like they're gonna murder each other. They're
Four
at
What are
GTD
you driving?
cars that are
they're
that are in the
they're at,
same
like, turn
class.
4 right now.
Okay.
Oh, I'm driving a GT3 car. Porsche,
Right.
obviously.
Right. Yeah. And if they're a GTD car, they're the same class as you.
Oh,
So
did I say
I
G
wouldn't
I
even bring.
meant, I meant GTP. I meant GTP.
Okay. Yeah. So if there's
Yeah, yeah.
four hypercars, so if you're exiting six, they would have had to have been within 40 car lengths by the time. So they'd have to be probably exit of five when you're into six for me to even want to queue up the radio and let you know that.
Okay.
So once they're within, so now you're exit of six coming up on the banking in Speedway one. Once they get within 40 car, I'm gonna say pack of four hypers, first car's 40 back.
Gotcha.
And then
Okay.
as they're getting closer, okay, first one was 20 back. Now it's three of them nose to tail. First one's looking left side, or they're splitting you. You're going to be three wide middle. Ton of different verbiage. You're just letting your eyes, uh,
Do you
go
so
ahead.
when you made that call, I don't even remember what you said, but when you made the call, there was like a syncopation to
Typical
it,
driver.
like a sync. Yeah, I'm just like, yeah, 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 yeah. There's cars. Yeah. Yeah, yeah." uh, when you made that call, is the syncopation of your speech and like the separation between the syllables, is that on purpose, just for like absolute clarity? Like, is that something that you had to like teach yourself, or is that just something? Because
That's just
it seems like
the way
Sam,
it's always been.
like you're really empathetic, like you're like thinking of like what the driver would want because like you said yourself is a driver. But I'm wondering how much of this is stuff like over the years that you've learned, or maybe it was just empathy right off the bat, like what I would want. I'm curious like what that evolution looks like.
It was always that way from the start, and I think that's why. I mean, funny thing is, a lot of guys have said I've got a great voice for radio, and so that's whether that helps or not. But no, it's just you got to be calm. You got to be even keeled. You don't want to get excited because then the driver's going to hear that excitement in your voice, and that could ramp him up. So any of those things, just trying to stay as even keeled and calm as possible. And at the end of the day, I'm just relaying to you what's going on around you. I had this speech with someone else earlier this past weekend at the Roar. I said, I'm never going to tell you how to drive the car unless I'm telling you where to go to avoid an incident. Other than that, I'm giving you information, and then from there, you're going to choose how to use that information and what to do behind the wheel.
So you never cue up the radio and go, can't park there, bud.
No, no, never done that.
I well, oh, I just lost the question. Shoot, something about. Oh, I was going to ask. So you're given the driving background that you have and whatever else, you're watching most of the sessions, if not every session. The reason I asked this question is because when I was trying to help Robert Thorne with his Formula Drift stuff, I was not the designated spotter, but his spotter at the time wasn't very good, so I was trying really hard to at least support with that role. And I realized that role is spying on everybody else to know what their patterns are, so that I can advise Robert on what they're going to do. And then I'm also advising him on what he looks like from the outside because he's being judged on how he looks. And you're in the car, you don't know what it looks like. So I realized it was way more like recon and advice giving for like maybe try this or you're wide on this, whatever. Do you get ever involved with like the car setup looks like X or the anything like that? Maybe even not with the big pro
Like
teams, but like
like
especially when you're working with like
this guy
GS
breaks a
and
half brake
M25.
marker early.
So that's something that I typically don't like to do because I'm not a driving coach, but the TCR team that I'm spotting for this year, which is RVA Graphics by Speed Syndicate, their bronze driver is John Morrow. and John's a great driver, has a TCR car of his own, um, but hadn't been to Daytona in a while. And to see what the line that the other TCR cars were running, Luke Rumberg, who was the lead driver, and then Alex Garcia, who's the middle driver, what they were doing and the attitude of the car versus what John was. So I ended up doing a ton more driver coaching with him and just line adjustment, things like that, than I typically would. I would never do that with the Mustang or anybody in WeatherTech. And if it's a GS car, I wouldn't either. You got to really know that driver, and if he's asking for it and looking for it, then like you said, Tom, you can see what the attitude of the other cars are and what they need to do to find some time. So, but it's and especially because it was a roar, it wasn't during the race. Then you can do that. Other than that, it might be wet track versus dry track. Where's everybody finding the grip at? Things of that
Yeah, I
nature.
didn't think
Some of
about
that
that.
stuff as a spotter can definitely pick up on. But that's really, or MX5, which is some of the toughest spotting that I ever do, especially here at Daytona. Which where's everybody running at? Is there a different line they're taking? Things of that nature. So it seems like I don't want to call it the lesser tier, but that's my best way to put it, of the series. Then you dabble a little bit more into that.
Makes sense.
I bet the MX-5,
Um,
how do you like, do you just, because I bet the MX-5 Cup car, like, it would probably be hard because you were talking about the even keel. Is it hard to keep like an even keel with the chaos of MX-5 Cup car? Because like,
It's without a doubt the hardest to do that because they're in a pack, and it could be 6 cars pushing, it could be 8 cars, 4 rows too wide. It's as close to speedway style NASCAR drafting that you're going to see on a road course.
yeah.
So yeah, there's been a few times I've gotten a little bit more hyped up spotting MX5 than I do in other series, but I tried not to.
Now I'm wishing that the iRacing spotter got hyped up for me. That would be so good. Like a
while
little,
we're on the, we've had these ideas for announcer packs or spotter packs that you could like record little voice and replace the voice in the game. We need a Sam Myers one now, in addition to the Kyle one and the, what was the other one? Zach Lavoy, I think. No, Austin
what
Cobb.
yeah, well, the Austin Cobb one, but what was the one we came up with yesterday with it was like the angry Australian or something?
Yeah, I don't remember what the
Oh,
impression was,
no.
but it was too good to recreate. It was one of those good off-air moments. Um, but you mentioned MX5, so you're spotting this weekend for MX5 TCR and GTD Pro.
Correct.
So how many okay, and on, let's say, practice day, what's a typical practice day look like? And then when you get to like races, what does that typically look like for you?
So
Like
we
when
can
you
take
and your
so Wednesday so tomorrow we'll start in. We've got MX5 session at 1 p.m. Their first of the weekend. And I think there's an hour break from 1 to 3, and then I think we've got the first TCR or Michelin Challenge session of the actual 24 race weekend, and then there's another MX5 session after that. So Wednesday, tomorrow's the first day to kind of ease into that, and then Thursday you jump right into it because literally it's I think we're first on track session is at 8:30, and with the night practice we're gonna go to 8:30 at night, and I'm literally gonna get an hour for lunch and an hour for dinner, and those are only gonna breaks other than the 10 or 15 minutes between sessions.
So are you just like up in like a little crow's nest, like exposed into the elements the whole time, or do you got like a little
Yep.
hut to sit in, or nope, you're just
No,
outside?
I'm up on top of the spotter stand of Daytona. If it does get really inclement, if it's pouring down rain, which is what we did Sunday because we did have some bad weather here, you can go down to level 5. There's the media center, and you can spot from there, which is what I did. I've done it various times through the years. For 22, when we won the Rolex 24 with FAF, that was the year it was highs of 30. So I spotted both of my 6-hour stints in the media center.
So you're up there for 6 hours at a time, you get relieved for 6 hours, you go back up there for 6 hours, and you're talking every single time a GT3 car gets, every time your car gets a prototype within 40 car lengths of it or 20 car lengths of it for 6 hours straight.
Correct.
Okay.
What happens if you lose it? Like, you lose track of the car once. So that has to happen, right?
So, luckily enough, through a nice, it has happened. It's not as bad now as it was when I first started. Um, but now through there's a great web app called Alchemel Live Timing that we
Mhm.
use. So I actually have two iPads. On one I'll keep live timing and scoring just with a full rundown, and another one that actually have a positioning so you can see marching ants. So if I do lose the car, but um, you know,
Forgot about that.
through all the years, you learn to find those little intricacies that will set your car apart from all the other cars on track. One thing I love about the Mustang that I'm with this year, their spotter lights are a nice bright orange, and I can pick that car out on track from anywhere. It's the only other car that has the orange is Rexy, the AO number 77 Porsche, but
Mhm.
there's there's in their rear quarter window. It's kind of a triangle shape where ours just makes kind of a L shape because it goes across the top of the car and then down the B pillar. And then we've also got another spotter light across the top of the rear the back window where they've got one kind of down low on the rear bumper. So it's those little intricacies that you're trying to pick out for your car that set it apart from everyone else.
Okay, so I have another question. What are like the tools of the trade when you're up there? So you have something to look at the live timing, like marching ants thing. Is that like is
Hmm.
that just your phone?
No, that's an iPad.
Okay, so it's iPad. Do you have like a battery bank with it?
Oh yeah. Or there's every 12 feet there's outlets and we've got
Oh, there's
waterproof
plugs up there. Okay.
GFCIs. So
I'm
yeah, you can plug
imagining
everything in.
okay, I'm imagining like you're like you like strapped yourself to like a light pole or something and you're just like it like blowing in the wind like a flag.
No, that was Sebring 3 years ago when we're 50 feet in the air on a scissor lift for
Oh,
12 hours
okay.
straight.
All right.
But yeah, they don't allow us to do that anymore. But yeah, no, at Daytona where there's a proper spotter stand, that's definitely not the case.
Okay. So all right, you have a tablet for the live timing and the marching ants and then do you have like binoculars like almost
Yep.
like special ops like where like it folds down off your helmet or something or like what does
Nope.
that look
I've
like?
got I've got two different sets of binoculars. I've got my wide angle that I use basically the whole time I'm at Daytona. It's got the widest field of view through the binoculars by double anything else is on the market. Then I've got another set of binoculars that I bought just for spotting at Indy 500 last year. That's very high end, high res. Because the way I've explained to people when I was spotting for Felix on the Meyershank Racing number 60, I'm looking 7/8 of a mile away, and I'm trying to pick out a yellow Mike's Hard Lemonade decal that's on the outside of his front winglet, and he's doing 220 mile an hour. So yeah,
So,
it's
so you said high res, so they're like they're digital binoculars?
they're not digital, no, but they're Swedish high end optics, and I think they retail for about $1,500.
Oh,
I think I'm more interested in the gadgets more than anything. So excuse me if I'm nerding out on
No,
binoculars,
you're good.
but
You'd enjoy my headset then because it's a custom headset that's about that same price point. So
so wait, what's
wild.
special about the headset?
the amount of inputs and the amount of push to talks. So it's six radio inputs, it's four push to talks, and then out of the front two push to talks, it also has pigtails to where I can use a remote push to talk. That way, I don't have to keep my hands up on the headset for 6 hours straight.
Okay, hold on. You got to explain why would you have is that so you can like talk to like the pit wall or something like
Yep.
cuz
So I've
multiple
got
people can talk
so
to you?
car is always on the left side, crew is on the right side, spotter channel for talking to the other spotter is also on the right side, and you're monitoring race control on the right side as well. So for Daytona, it's not as critical, but you get to other tracks where you're spotting two cars at once. That's where you're going to use all six of those ports. You're going to have
Mm,
the car in both of your front radios, the crew's going to be in both of your middle radios, and then you're going to use race control in both of the rear radios. So
okay.
yeah, you end up getting
Are you ever
a lot of
talking
voices.
to race control? I feel like
No,
you wouldn't.
scan,
Yeah.
scan, listen only.
Gotcha. And then what would you say to another spotter?
Typically, that's going to be the guy that is on the radio with you. So it's going to be you're letting him know what cars are around him. So we did this when I spotted NASCAR for 2 years with Stuart Haas for Kevin Harvick at the road courses. And you've basically got enough spotters to where you've got eyes on the car around the track all the time. You're just letting those other spotter know the next spotter's going to see him, what car's behind him, and then the car length between him. So, at Watkins Glen, I'm in the bus stop spotting him, and there's another guy down exit the carousel, and it's just going to be like, you know, behind the five, ahead of the 10, -3 +3. So he's 3 cars behind the five, 4 cars ahead of the 10, just letting those gaps. You're doing that on the spotter channel because Kevin behind the wheel doesn't need to always
No,
hear
he
that.
doesn't need to hear that. Yeah, but so then the
Yes.
spotters hear your spots, so they kind of understand what's happening.
Yep.
Let
They
me
know
let
what car is coming to him, what the gap is. That way, does one of them have a run? Does he have a run? They can know what to expect. That way, you're constantly doing that handoff. And it's just a way for spotters to communicate with one another. So, for one, you're not doing it on the crew channel to where you're going to keep the guys on pit road from communicating with another. And you definitely don't want to do it on the car channel because the driver doesn't need to hear that.
Yeah. Does it feel like when it's multiple spotters, does it feel like you guys are doing like a verbal dance?
Yeah, it's a verbal dance. It's almost a little bit of play calling as he's going around the track.
Have you ever tried
For
commentating?
have not.
I have a question that might seem a little unrelated, and maybe it is, but it won't escape my brain. Have you ever worked a course in autocross before, like as the radio person?
No.
Never. Okay. Well, then my
Nope. I've
question's
only been to
pointless.
2 autocrosses in my life.
Oh,
Is that
okay,
right? 2 or
gotcha.
3?
'Cause I was gonna
Yeah.
ask, cause sometimes when they hand me the radio, cause I can't pay attention for long enough, like, somebody will hit a cone and I'm like, "Oh, crap, what car was that?" It's the black Honda, I don't know, like like, I won't know what number was on the car or anything like that. So I was wondering, cause you have to remember all these cars that are around, and if you're like, it was the lemonade car, couple in front of" you got it.
Yeah. No, it's, through the different disciplines of racing, it's amazing what the different drivers look for. So you get into sports car racing and especially at the WeatherTech level, being with FAF Motorsports for 5 years and dealing with factory Porsche drivers, the information they want is different than what the guys in Michelin Challenge want. That's different than what guys in TCR want. It's just so it's for them. They didn't care. They want to know what class it was. They don't care about a car number. They really don't care what make of car it is, unless it's another at the time, unless it was another Porsche. Um, this year with Multimatic's a little different. They're fine knowing, hey, is that and like last year when I was with FAF and we had switched to McLaren, they were fine knowing, is that a Mustang? Is it a BMW? Is it a Porsche? Is it an Aston? What just because where the those drivers, factory McLaren drivers were different than the factory Porsche drivers. So it's knowing who you're working with and establishing that baseline of communication going into and through a season.
Are all the Porsche factory drivers like the same person, like little clones that they produced in Stuttgart? They are they all have the same requests and personality
The same voice.
and if you can't answer, blink twice.
He's blinking.
They're all different.
Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah. That sounded really convincing, Sam.
yeah.
Guys, I'm having an issue here with my headset. Give me a second here.
Yeah, yeah.
No
He's
worries.
having an issue, everyone.
Mhm.
Oh no, Sam's having an issue. There's
Oh, nope, there it is.
Porsche literally
Stupid
just
cheap
came out of the
headphones.
ceiling in Sam's room.
Just
No,
long enough to dodge the question.
no. The factory Porsche drivers have a reputation, and for the most part, it's true.
What's
So
Hold on. I don't know what the reputation is. What's the reputation?
they can be uh,
Intense?
it's a clean way to say it. They can be jerks on the racetrack.
Oh, okay.
Funny thing is, I can actually. So what was that 21? Yeah, 21 when we won the first championship with FAF. We're Daytona. First time ever working with Lawrence Van Thor. I could tell when he was in the car versus the other 3 drivers we had in the car just by the way he drove the car into turn 5 at Daytona. So it was
Wow,
he basically came out of the kink, got to the track out point, and never moved left. He didn't
interesting.
care who was behind him. You're going around the outside.
Oh yeah, but you have to do that. That makes sense because I mean, from the driver's perspective, the unspoken etiquette of the 24-hour, from my understanding, as if I've done it, is the safest place to be for a GT car is on the inside at all times, no matter what, to the point that it's the rule on the banking. They have to be on the bottom. But like, yeah, if you go through that kink and then you just literally stay right, force everybody around the outside, because otherwise their problem becomes your problem. If they're on your outside, whatever.
It's the unwritten rule, but it has changed over the last couple years to where um, you don't see it as much. You definitely see hypercars and P2s, you know, as they're diving to the inside into five and
Yeah.
trying to take that line compared to in years past, they would be ready to move. And I think it's some of it's just the closing speeds that they've gotten to that your normal line is going to take you to that track out point. And if not, then they have to sacrifice speed through the kink to be able to go left. And they just don't want to do it. So they're wanting to throw it in on the inside of five and get that spot as quick as they can.
Yeah, in iRacing, you there is times where you kind of hog the right side before turn 5, which for people who aren't looking at a track map, that's the second hairpin in the infield of Daytona.
It's a
Um,
West hairpin, yeah.
yeah, so there are times where you hog the inside. It's like when the prototype car is literally like there's no way for you to not lose time. But in other instances where you move to the left, you can just kind of like have a later apex and just get like a stronger exit off and you lose very minimal time. I could see that being most of the passes in that turn just because
Yep,
you can let them by and lose minimal time. Rather
correct.
than
And
if you
that's
stay
what
to the
the name
inside,
of the
you
game
lose more
is.
time.
Correct. The goal is for them to have cleared you by the second part of that corner. That way, they've got their runoff. You can still use the whole track at the exit, and you're not still too wide at the exit, and you're both still losing time.
Yeah, but there is instances where you're like, if they throw it up the inside right here, I'm gonna have to park it so hard where I'm gonna lose an unfortunate amount of time. So I'm just gonna make him drive around the outside. That does happen too.
Correct.
You have to judge that as like the slower class driver.
Yep.
Tom was making faces like, no.
I I will never let someone go up the inside of a faster class unless I like open the door and roll out the red carpet at any track at any series and like I just won't let them happen because I don't want to get dive bombed up the inside. But I remember
Just
watching of
asking for
the first
contact at
time.
that point. Sometimes
What's that?
you're asking for contact at that point. Sometimes, depending
I'm
upon
sure I'm
who
sure
the
I
other
am
driver is.
in if I was in WeatherTech, I'm sure. They'd be like just knock me out of my
Yeah,
way
they're
once
like,
and
this
then
is gonna be a
I've learned
problem
my
the whole
lesson.
race. I'm gonna solve this problem.
Pretty much. Uh so you alluded to it a little bit with the NASCAR stuff, but you've spotted for basically everything from every level of some sort of either oval or road course. What are the different expectations? Like, what are the at least the common different challenges for you and expectations? And then also like the difference between working for the Ford factory team or an IndyCar team versus like some guys who kind of have a TCR team put together. Like, how different is that for you on your end?
A lot of it's still the same. It's just the level of information. It's weird because you would think as you go up in tiers, up into Michelin Challenge, WeatherTech, NASCAR, stuff like that, the higher level you get, the more information that they're going to want. But it's almost the inverse of that. They're factory drivers. They know what they're doing. They need less information. Where a TCR car, an MX-5, a VP Challenge car, they sometimes need more information just because they're not going to process it as quickly. So you have you know break that message down a little bit more to a level that they're going to understand it.
I see. So like the highest level guys, it's a routine of information, highest level people that are it's a routine information that's constant but not complicated. Whereas the lower level or the less experienced or whatever you go, the information gets way more detailed, but it's also like maybe they're racing for 13th, so it's like just different.
Correct. Yep.
Oh, makes sense. Which one's your favorite to spot for or work in
Um,
of all of them?
That's not an
I
answer.
don't know that I have a favorite.
What are these your
It's
children? You don't have to play this game, Sam.
no, I enjoy being there and spotting for all of them because at the end of the day, everybody asks because there's a lot of spotters that are only going to spot just for WeatherTech. They don't want to do a Michelin Challenge car or an MX-5 car or a VP Racing car, so anything like that. And it's like, no, if I'm at the track, I want to have my eyes on cars and communicating with people as much as I can. For one, it keeps my brain going, keeps me focused, and just keeps me good and with repetitions. So, um, that's just what I prefer to do. Yes, it makes for long days and can be drained at the end of it, but still, it's just one of those things that I enjoy doing.
Does it scratch your competitive itch?
It does. It definitely does.
Have you ever lost
Because
your
you mentioned being
voice?
an athlete. Go ahead, DJ.
Have you ever lost your voice?
No, I have not.
It's got iron vocal cords.
Remember, he's got a voice for radio. They told him.
Yeah, apparently I lose my voice
Part of that is endurance.
if I get too excited and it just disappears and I'm like, cool. Now this is me from now on. I'd be like, left side.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
3% back.
Yeah.
Be like,
What were you going to ask, Tom?
can somebody get squeaky off the mic, please? That's what the driver would be
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah, right.
You let the 12-year-old play Call of Duty.
Yeah, yeah.
I was gonna I had to ask because you mentioned you were an athlete when you were younger. That was your competitive outlet, and then you got into this as a competitor driving, and then you over the last 15, 20 years have pivoted to mostly working. But I know from my experience working doesn't mean you don't like commentating scratches my competitive itch half the time. So
Mhm.
I was just curious. We talk a lot about like the competitive mindset of stuff, preparation for events, the mental game of stuff, and I was curious how that ties into your like competitive spirit of wanting to be like you're wanting to win even though you're not driving the car. Obviously, no one's
Oh,
driving
for
the car.
sure. That's the great thing about racing is just being a spotter. You can still have an effect on the outcome of what the driver's doing, and I think that started back when I started building and prepping cars and renting cars. I found then that I got just as much enjoyment and excitement out of watching people go fast and achieve their goals and their dreams in my cars as I did out of driving myself. And then from there, that kind of transitioned over to when I started spotting, seeing teams do well and drivers do well in the cars that I was spotting was essentially the same thing. So um, it's there's still other things that I do to scratch the competitive itch. Um, but yeah, that really fits the bill.
All right, Sam. So the team wins and you're tied to a light pole. How long
Mhm.
does it take you to get down to winner's lane? Like, do you get there in time for like the celebration when the car's rolling in, or like is it like impossible to
No,
get there in time?
no, we won the Rolex 24 hour in 2022. 20 minutes later, I'm at Daytona Airport. Couldn't even go to Victory Lane because I had to get my flight home. So, and that's happened multiple times that we get blessed and are have a good car and do well enough this year. Checker flag flies at 1:40. I'm airborne at 3 p.m. flying home to Columbus.
Is that because you work on Monday or like
Oh yeah, I've still got a 50-hour a week daytime job.
you couldn't just miss the flight and go spray champagne?
No,
Oh
no.
Well, and
man.
also half the time you might have another session coming up. Like if you just finished, maybe not on the Daytona weekend, but on a normal race weekend, you finish MX5, GS comes right out, then VP Challenge comes right out, then WeatherTech comes right out, and then your day's done.
Are you bummed that you
Yep.
missed it?
No, not really. That's
Okay.
I being a spotter, it really kind of fitting for me because I've always been the guy that's always I enjoy being heard and not seen. So it just kind of ties in with that role for me.
Okay.
And so yeah, I don't really don't do the social media stuff near as much as I used to at race weekends. A lot of guys will promote themselves a lot more than I do, and it's just I just want to kind of let my work on the radio with the team, uh, you know, be what it is, and as long as they're happy and the team does well and I get to do it again, then that's all I need.
I was gonna say, if you did want to go to the celebration, but it sounds like you don't, that maybe you bring up like a parachute up there and you do some like base jumping off the top of the Daytona
Yeah, I
Tower,
don't know that
and then you just
Daytona would go
glide
for
in.
that, but it's knowing how packed that infield is and trying to get from under the grandstands all the way around through one of the two tunnels and get in there and get parked. I would bet it would be a solid 20 minutes, if not 30,
Not with a
to
Well, I
get.
think
parachute.
more.
Not with a parachute.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, you've done it, Tom, and
Yeah,
it's
getting around
crazy with
Daytona is awesome.
traffic. Yeah,
But, I agree with DJ. I think you could make a case for, like, a 2 for 1 where they let you be, like, the entertainment as you parachute down.
Hmm.
They'll attach an American flag to you or whatever they
What
want.
if all the spotters did that? Or what if they just set up zip
Like a
lines?
spotters parade.
They just set up
there you
zip
go.
lines, and then you guys just like the winning team like hooks into the zip line and then flies down. You have like a Mustang flag behind you as you're like waving through the
Yeah,
air. That'd be amazing, wouldn't it? They could
It would be
totally do
amazing. I
this.
don't know that I'm the right guy to do that, but it would be amazing.
They'll harness you in. They'll harness you in. Just don't
Yeah,
have long
be a
hair.
big
It might get caught up in the line or something.
it'd be a big harness.
alright, I have 2 kinda silly questions. If you don't have answers, it's totally fine. But what is do you have, like, a specific radio communication that stands out to you as, like, the funniest thing you've ever heard over the radio or, like, the craziest thing that's ever happened over the radio?
Um, Not for the funniest, no. I don't remember.
Most interesting?
I would say so. Go back to 22 when we won the 24 hour. We've coming down to the last 30 minutes. It goes full course yellow. Matthew Jaminet is in the car. First event he and I'd ever worked together, and we've got the other Porsche, which was I can't remember. I know Lawrence Van Thor was driving it, and it was the only event that that car did that year, and it was literally the most intense 30 minutes that I had on the radio. The two of them were never separated by more than two car lengths for the last 30 minutes. And I just, whoever was in front would definitely tend to get a little bit better run. And I went to the phrase, focus on your exits one too many times at the bus stop. Like,
And
dude, I get it. I know how to drive the effing car. So it was like, so I'm like, sorry, we're learning here. But
wow, damn.
so that's that was it. But we won, and at the end of the year, we had a little get together up in Canada, and he and I had grown to enjoy working with each other. And he had just come from Homestead, watching the because he that was after they made the announcement that he and Matty Campbell, our other driver, were going to be factory Penske drivers in the Penske Porsche GTP cars. And he said, yeah, he went and watched the Penske guys at Homestead. Said he wanted to do some oval racing. And I said, well, you ever need a spotter, you know who to call. And he's like, yep, I ever do some oval racing, you'll be my guy. So I'm like, that will work.
Cool, dude. That's so cool.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
It's because you were
Okay, and then
reminding him about those exits, and he's like, "You know what? Sam's right."
Funny thing was that it became to be a little bit of a running joke with the FAF guys um, in the next couple of years, just because they would nudge me a little bit every now and then on the radio about some stuff on the crew channel or spotter channel about that. And I just have to laugh it off. But it was good.
that's funny. And then the other one is, what's the weirdest or most memorable or funniest driver request you've ever gotten? Like, they're telling you what they want, and they tell you something, you're like, "What?" You have
Hmm.
one of those?
That might take a minute. Not that not that jumps out. There was a guy who was listening in last year he was supposed to be driving the VP racing car that I was spotting, and he had an issue going on with his license. So Mark Miller hopped in and drove it instead. So he had a headset on and was on pit lane listening. And we get to dinner that night. He's like, so when you're saying 10 back, is that 10 meters or 10 seconds? Or I was like, no, dude, it's 10 car lengths. He just, he was new enough to the sport that he didn't know what length I was referring to. So it was that was one of the weirder questions that was always kind of obvious to me, but obviously not obvious
He's
to
like,
him.
10 what? I could
Yeah,
also
like
see he was in a GS car, right?
yes.
So I honestly, if I had not gone up to the stand with you and you had told me some of your verbiage, I would have been just as confused because last year at Indy, I had two spotters on the radio with me, John Morley and then Trevor, who you work
Hmm.
with,
Yep.
and Drusco.
And Drusko,
Say his
yes.
name last name? Yeah. So they were both on the radio, and if they were telling me GS car 30 back, GS car 20 back, and I'm like, I'm in a TCR car. I know. Like,
I got
so
I
we
got
had the
plenty of time
conversation
to look
after, like,
around.
a GS car is not catching that fast. I'm fine.
Mm.
But if they had just been going 30 back, I would have been like, I don't know that I would have picked up on what that was either.
Is there any kind of
Yeah.
briefing before the races so you guys can get all on the same page or anything like that?
Typically, it's either I'll send out a pre-event email to if I get the driver emails, strategist, engineer, team manager, car chief, any of that type of stuff. And I've been sending them for years, so I can literally just copy and paste from previous years, but it just goes through what that spotter communication is going to look like. So that's one of the first things they can reply back. If on WhatsApp we've got a team chat going, I can do that pre-event communication through that team chat. That way, everybody understands, what. It's just to establish a baseline of expectation as to what they're going to hear on the radio before we get to the track.
And
Makes sense.
during that time, a driver's never requested like speaking a Southern draw.
Nope.
Man, these guys,
No request for accents.
these guys aren't
Yet.
trying hard enough. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
wait,
right.
you just wait, Sam. I'm waiting for my IMSA call.
I'm gonna message Johnny Morrow and tell him to just make up some wild stuff.
There you go. Johnny's a good dude. He really enjoyed working with him, and I think he really enjoyed having me on because it's like there was a time when Chris Valley, the crew chief and the guy who runs Speed Syndicate, it was had been wet and it's drying out, and Chris had come on the radio and said something to him, and John just comes on and says, "Me and the spotter only right now." I was like, that comment from him told me that he was comfortable with me on the radio, giving him the information he needs. And then, as Chris knows, because he and I had talked about it, I was like, dude, anything you want to ask the driver, just feed it to me on the crew channel. I can turn around and ask him, and he can give you what you need, whether it's fuel remaining, anything like that. Where's the car feeling, any of that type of stuff. So
I actually,
that's I good.
I think that would be better because, I like, I wouldn't want any brain capacity to try to recognize where that voice is coming from. If it's just the same voice over and over again, and that voice requests information, then because there would have to be brain processing that goes into like who's asking for that information, where's that information going? But if it's just like a back and forth, I feel like that would take up less bandwidth than if
That's what
multiple
I
people were
really like to
asking.
do on, especially be it Michelin Challenge or anything else. I tried to get and some teams they don't have the budget, so they're only running a car channel, so you don't have that other channel communication for a crew channel. In especially in a sprint series, if it's MX5, if it's VB Challenge, all that communication is going to be done on the car channel, and the driver just gets to deal with it. Luckily enough, when we can, I try to establish that with the team. We've got a crew channel. Anytime you need to hear something from the driver, you have a question, tell me what you want on the crew channel. I can ask him. For one, I can ask him when it's appropriate for him to field that question and answer it on track, depending upon where he's at,
Yeah.
where traffic is around him, and then it just works. And that's a lot of what NASCAR spotting is. It typically, once the car hits the track, it's only the driver and the spotter. Only time it's not is if they're going to pit on that lap. You'll hear the crew chief come on and say, "Come this time," or whatever it is.
Yeah, that makes sense
But other than that,
because you're gonna know when the driver has capability of like some extra bandwidth to what's happening.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it can be really effective at Daytona. You get to a lot of other tracks that's just not going to be the case because you go to Sebring, you go to Road Atlanta, Road America, other places. even with 2 spotters, you're not going to have eyes all the way around the track. So that's where at least most teams, especially in WeatherTech, you've only got one guy on the timing stand that's going to communicate with the car. And that way, it's either gonna the voices he's going to hear either going to be the spotters or your voice from the timing stand.
Do all
So
spotters have a low radio voice like you, Sam?
no,
I'm imagining like the
No,
discrepancy of spotter voices. Wouldn't that be a little distracting, Tom, if like the two spotters had like wildly different voices? Or maybe we
yeah,
would be so zoned in that like it wouldn't matter. But I'm just thinking like
for something fun for you guys to try. So whether it be coming up for Daytona 500 or some NASCAR race, pick a race, download the NASCAR app. To the NASCAR app, while the cars are on track, they have a scan function where you can go in, pick a car, and listen to. And IndyCar does the same thing. You can listen to driver, crew chief, spotter, all that. And NASCAR is better because you get a lot more spotter communication. But then you can hear the various voices of the spotters.
especially in NASCAR, that has to be gold because there's some characters.
Oh, it's
You
so
know,
there is, and it's also where you can learn some stuff because that's how I watch. I actually all the NASCAR races I watch, I've got the race on, but I'm listening to it through the spotter channel. Um, typically listen to Tim Fedewa, who's co-spotter on the with Ford on the sister Mustang car, who I spotted with with Kevin Harvick and various other stuff. So I like to listen
yeah.
to him a lot. There's some other guys, but you listen to certain guys, you can hear how long and drawn out their transmissions are, and it just the amount of time it takes them to deliver the message. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you might want to speed that up.
I've always had that problem with spotting. I try to be really aware of like where would I want it for me in the car, but I know what length I'm going to talk, and I'm kind of verbose anyway. I've always struggled with being a spotter or even
You
coaching trackside. I can't condense things down quickly enough really to be effective in the radio in the moment.
Little funny story behind that. Back when Porsche had the GTLM programs, I think
Sure.
they only use spotters at Daytona, but one of their requirements for spotter is that when you keyed the mic up to talk, you could only say 7 words before you let go of the button. So you had to figure out how to deliver your message in 7 words or less.
In haiku.
Right?
could you use German?
If I knew German, but I
Nice.
don't know.
German always has more syllables. That would be terrible.
No,
Right?
not syllables,
Although
7
less
words.
words.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
DJ's thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but no, it was interesting, but no,
That is interesting. So I kind of agree from the watching the racing perspective. I was working a race from pit lane and I had the director feed in my ear on my headset. And then the other side was the commentators. And I enjoyed listening to the director feed of like coordinating the camera shots of what was happening in the race more than I enjoyed listening to the commentators
yep.
because it gave me like two things to do at once instead of just like watching the race, even when it wasn't a race. Like there was stuff going on. It was pretty cool. I have to
Yeah, it's
remember that to like watch NASCAR that way sometime.
yeah, for sure. So that way you can hear all that. You can only select one car, but whether you've got a particular spotter you want to follow or a particular driver, and it just give you a little bit more insight
Is there one
as
that we
to
should cuz there's going to be a bunch of our listeners that do this. Is there one that we should be ambushing on the spotter
Or
app?
what race are you working? And then we can all listen to you.
Yeah, no pressure, Sam.
I don't know yet. I'm still working that. So I hadn't planned to do any NASCAR races this year, but talking with Timmy this last weekend, there uh, there may be a potential for me to do the Portland Xfinity race, and then also trucks and ARCA go to Lime Rock and run at Lime Rock Park in August. And they have a conflict because I believe Cup and Xfinity are at Atlanta that weekend. So um, there's a good chance I'm going to be spotting NASCAR trucks and ARCA at Lime Rock.
That'll be cool. And actually, I could see it being pretty useful because I think that'll be I don't
It will.
know.
We
I
we
could
were
see
having a
that being more
conversation at
overly.
dinner Saturday night about how many spots because NASCAR World they want to have the drivers want eyes on them every inch of the track. So it's like we've done it with two, and you still have typically when we would do it with two with FAF. I'm on the outside of turn one over up at the Skip Barber building, and you know I've got them coming down 12 all the way through to they go out of sight into uh, what is it? Is it Kettle Bottoms? I can't remember the name of it, but and then we put our other spotter over in five, but then they've still got the fast right hander um, before the last downhill. It's blind, and that's where like in a you think in a NASCAR in a truck, that
Mm.
fast right hander before you come under the bridge would be a high probability for somebody to have an incident. So it's like, yeah, you could probably easily use three there to accomplish what they're wanting.
I would love to be in a scenario where I felt like I would want that much visibility on that kind of road course, because that would tell me that I mean, obviously people want this information, so it's incredible, but I've never been in a scenario in my experience of needing or knowing how to use all that maybe, mostly because 'cause I'm either
Well,
single class or, the cars are
right, and it's
slow
a
enough
single
for me to
class, but
process
the
it.
one thing you got to
Yeah.
think about when it comes to NASCAR in particular is what's the driver in. And you've seen the pictures of their seats with the big head bolsters, and you cannot see
Mhm.
out of those cars. The mirrors are junk, so that's where they really need to have eyes on them at all time. Is because
Yeah, really good point.
they just can't see what's going on around them.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be cool to
So,
experience that once.
yep.
Um, we'll let you go soon, but, I had a question about just that sort of, like, kind of in the realm of the competition and the driving. What have you seen, particularly on track, but even off track, in working with all these factory pro drivers and IndyCar drivers and these people who are so successful at that? Like, you're not working with the chump teams that are at the back. You're working with teams that are, like, doing a good job. Is there anything consistent you've seen that you either take for yourself or that you would advise other people to take for, like, preparation or behavior, or is there, like, a
Mindset.
common thing? Like, you mentioned this guy, you can always tell he's in the car because of the way he goes through turn 5. Is there stuff
Mhm.
like that that has popped up and you're like, "That makes a better driver, that makes a better competitor," whatever?
Um,
Big question,
Nothing that,
sorry to put you on.
yeah, nothing that jumps out. I mean, the biggest thing you can see about all these teams is, for the most part, the camaraderie. That was what we had at FAF. We were like a big family, and the fact that not able to be back with them because they didn't think we were going to be back for 2025. So I made the choice to go to Multimatic for this year. But I had a previous, you know, stint with them and during COVID year 2020, and just typically, even though it's professional, sometimes a lot of fly-in guys, they're typically still some fairly close-knit guys and gals that work together, and lot of concentrated effort on that main goal to getting, you know, being the best and running at the front. Um, so yeah, just that, and then just ton of great work ethic. Putting in the hours that's necessary, and you know, doing the best with the BOP hand that you're dealt, because that's the game we get to live in.
Very true. What,
Yeah, that's good.
go ahead.
As I say, that's going to be one of the new things we get to play with this year is all the new torque monitoring sensors that each car has. That's new, and then also the switch from fuel to energy. So now you can have where in years past, and this is just a WeatherTech only, and I don't know 100% of how all this works, but it's not about fuel capacities and fuel flow rate. It's about energy. So you can still have a half tank of fuel left, but you could be out of energy by their sensors. You have to pit. So
Wait, what?
it's
In a
something.
GT car?
Yes, and I think that's to try and close the gap with the verbiage between hybrid GTP cars, hypercars, and the rest of the field. So the only class that doesn't apply to are the LMP2s, but both GTD Pro and GTD now have an allotment of energy that you can use over the course of a stint on track.
How are they calculating the energy?
You're asking the wrong guy, and it's no different than these new torque sensors that they've got in each of the cars. That's effectively
Okay, that's how they're
either on the
measuring it.
drive shafts or somewhere that has to be in there.
Yeah, so they're
So
measuring the torque over time, and then that can be equated to energy.
that's the way it would make the most sense to me. Yeah,
Yeah.
So it's, but the other point is now your car can't run if one of those torque sensors isn't working.
Mm.
So no different than you have a tire allotment, and and also with tire allotment, you also have the tire pressure requirement. And if you run it too low, then you have to pit and replace it right then, or you have a TPMS monitor inside the tire that fails. They'll let you run for a little bit, but then eventually you're gonna have to pit out of sequence and bolt a new tire on. So what happens? You're going and now this torque sensor fails. You just threw away a race because of the requirement that they have. So it's gonna be a big thing as to how IMSA officiates this whole deal for 2025.
Well, hopefully there's no torque sensors failing. Uh,
We had an
wait, you already
issue
had
in
one?
each car. We had one at each car back in November at the test,
Yikes.
and then you
Yay.
have to go to IMSA and get another sensor because I believe they are mandated and handed out by the series officials. Might be
And how
wrong with
much are
that.
they?
Yeah,
They're probably
not
so
not something that I get to
yeah.
above my pay grade, if you will.
I remember the first time I got my B-Spec car to a pro race and I was doing the budgets and stuff, and I did the budget simply on, like, licensing, registration, and getting the car compliant, and it was, like, $7,000 because there were, like, $1,000 radio harness that I was required to have so they could monitor me, and I had to have this yellow light system so they could require me to s or they could notify me when it was full course yellow, and I had to p like, all this stuff, it was crazy.
All the Bosch
But
stuff, yeah, all the IMSA timing and scoring stuff. It's crazy.
crazy, yeah. You ever miss the old Hondas?
I got to scratch the itch a little bit last fall with Greg Vandersloot. He has an ITA
Oh, yeah.
Integra that that he'd wrecked at the championships in 2019, and finally got it back together. And I told him I'd help him finish it up. So he came down last fall, and his dad and I, and we spent a day doing some stuff, and then got some new shocks, bolted those on, did a full setup, did a full alignment, and yeah, then he went out at the event at Mid Ohio in October and killed it. So it was great to see him back behind the wheel, and car handled the way he wanted to. The issue that he had back in 2019 was no longer there. So the upgrades and the corner balance and alignment tweaks definitely worked. And yeah, he was happy. So that's more of what I miss is the work in the garage on setup. It would have been great to be there to work with him, get some feedback, make some adjustments throughout the course of an event to get the car 100% to his liking. We were I was I think it was petite weekend, so he's a petite, and we're texting off and on. He had some questions, so um, but that was I still get to scratch it every now and then.
Yeah.
Do you get to scratch the driving itch? Because it sounds like you
No.
didn't drive that time. Do you want to
So
drive still, or do you just whatever?
there was a time back in COVID when things slowed down that I thought I might want to go do some champ cars, stuff like that. But then everything just sped back up, and now I already take, like, this year, I think I've got 20 weekends on my schedule between the IMSA schedule, the 2 weekends that are the Indy 500, and then I think there's 5 SRO events that I'm planning to spot as well. And now, if there's some other NASCAR stuff in there that I hadn't planned for, I only get 25 days off work. So
Yeah.
trying to take my PTO, and I'm supposed to go on a vacation with my wife in September. So it's planning all that and not piss off my employer too much is still a challenge.
Who needs them?
You still got to pay the bills, brother.
Yeah.
Who needs those either?
Yeah.
You can take
Have you
them,
thought about
trust
getting
me.
on?
What would happen? What are they gonna do? Throw you in jail?
No, they just shut everything off.
Well, but at least you're driving race cars.
Yeah,
He's
no,
not.
there was a time when I missed it, but now anymore, no. If I need to, I'll find a back road and do some spirited driving, and
There you
that's
go.
about it. So, get to be my age, DJ. You don't need to scratch that itch as bad anymore. So,
Oh, I'll let you know when that happens.
yeah, right.
He got a late start, so give him a little more time.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah, I didn't drive a go-kart till I was 26.
Sounds about like me. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
So, all right.
Yeah.
Well, is there any is there anything that we didn't touch on or we didn't ask that like maybe is something that you'd want to talk about on the podcast?
Um, I mean, some other stuff on spotting is we talked a lot about driver, spotter communication. We didn't really touch on crew or timing stand spotter communication, which can be really helpful, especially in weather tech with full course yellows, pass arounds, pit
Oh, I
road,
didn't even
off a pit road. You get final way-bys, and then new for this year is not only are they doing the prototype class split, which they've always done. Like last year, it was a prototype split, and then at the end of the prototype split, it was a GTP class split. This year, the first step is going to be what they call a category split, where all the prototypes are going to move to the front of the GT3 cars. And once that's complete, they're going to do a class split where the GTP cars will move from the P2s and the GTD Pros will move in front of the regular GTD cars. So that's where, for me, being on a GT Pro car, identifying once the pit stop sequence is complete, who is that GTD class leader? Because when it comes to class split time, that's who we're driving up around. So that's a new step that'll be new for me this year to be on keep up with. Um, I
Yeah.
it's it in a way I kind of felt that change was coming because with the mixture between GTD Pro and GTD up until this year, they uh, they qualified together, they raced together. It was always one pack at the start, and then they were never really separated out until end of the race for the final results. But multiple times you'd have the guys who are in GTD Pro is running third, or he's running like there's a couple of GTD cars with a guy with a GT Pro in between him. The guy in third's trying to get around this GT Pro car because he wants to get up to battle for the win, but the GT Pro guy doesn't want to get let him by because he's still trying to get around the two cars in front of him to get back up to his guys. So it's by doing that class split between Pro and regular GT, it'll hopefully alleviate some of that.
So what
Right.
I think I just need clarification and what that means. Does that mean like they're not gridded by quali time? They're gridded by like class?
Correct. So at the start on Saturday, it will be all the GTPs, all the P2s, all the GTD Pros, and then all the GTD cars. It won't be a mixed GTD Pro, GTD grid anymore, the
So
way it has been the
there
last couple years.
there's gonna be GTD cars that are faster than pro cars. Like
Correct.
so
Doesn't matter.
now they just have to drive through
Pro
those.
cars, yeah. Yep. Pro cars will still be in front.
But not only just in the qualifying, it's every single time there's been more than 15 minutes of green flag running. If a yellow
Yep.
flag comes out, they go into the procedure where pit lane opens for certain classes at certain
There'll
times.
still be, even if anytime there's a full course yellow, they would do a class split. If there's less than
Oh,
15 minutes,
even
they
if
just
it's
won't,
a short one?
even if it's a short yellow, they will still do a class split.
That's gonna
Okay,
They
be
so
just
then
won't,
no matter what
chaos.
they just won't open pit road.
I see. So that means literally every time there's a full course caution, all the GT Pro cars go in front of all the GTD cars every single
Right.
time.
And it's no different than a Michelin challenge. You see it all the
Correct.
time. You've got the bronze guys and the GS cars that the TCR cars are just killing everywhere. Every
To-
time you
Dude, that
get a
was
full
so
course yellow,
frustrating.
Tom has so many
oh, I'm
clips of him passing GS cars in a TCR car.
old Teddy and Frank and the rest of those
Oh
guys.
yeah.
Oh
At
yeah.
Ted, every single race, I was on pole 5 races in a row, right? So we had a little routine. Ted's always the slowest car. Ted would come up to me on the pre-walk or on the fan walk and say, "Hey Tom, good luck. I'll be out of your way." Get to his bumper, always in the way. I'm like, "Oh,
Yep.
Ted, get out of the way." But yeah, it would be
That
like
does
I
not
was
change.
usually in TCR, we were about halfway up the GS field, depending on the track. So and then they would
Yeah.
start you back in 20th to 30th, whatever the last place GS car is, and you'd pass 5 of them, and then a yellow would come out, and they'd all get to go right back by you, and then you'd have to
So
work
that's
your
just
way
part of
through
the
'em. I
game.
mean, it sucks when you're in the slow cars, but it does, like I think it's a, like, semi-acceptable version of, like, a synthetic competition
I think well, but
because you can never get away.
like I see I see that being exciting potentially for people watching on TV. But I see the level of incidents that bring out yellows more frequent because the field by pace hasn't sorted itself out. So you're more likely to have incidents that then reshuffle it back to the way it was. Then it still hasn't sorted itself out, so it has to reshuffle again. Like I just see that as a potential problem of just like cascading yellows. So the viewership of it is just like, it's just too many yellows, too much downtime. More time for commercials though, huh? Put the tinfoil hats on, everyone.
No, but on the flip side, it could totally. I think it's mostly going to work fine because it's the pro entries that are going to have the opportunity to go right around the AM entries. So like
Yeah,
with TCR and GS, there's a lot of amateurs that get to go in front. But this is like inherently the pro cars get to go around the AM cars, so in theory they shouldn't be that slow.
In theory.
correct, because also with the GT cars, there is always that mandate that the qualifying driver has to be silver, bronze, one of the amps. In the pro cars, you don't have that. Now, granted,
Right.
you've got some what we always like to call the super silvers that should be gold and are not, just haven't got that driver rating yet. They're still going to out qualify all, sometimes half of the pro cars, especially if
Yeah.
you're in, whatever make a car they're in has a better BOP than those pro cars do. So there's so many different factors that weigh into that. So
Oh, the AM cars and the pro cars aren't equal?
no, they are.
Oh, they are. Okay, you said something about the
They are, but
BOP.
right. But each manufacturer, even though they try to regulate the BOP, it's it's not an exact science. So um, certain cars are better in a straight line. Certain other cars are great in the infield. Certain cars are
But between the AM class and the pro
decent.
class, like a Porsche and AM is going to be the same as a Porsche and pro.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
So like in years
Yeah.
past, if you watch the first up to the first pit stop at Daytona, typically you'll see like whatever car is the best BOP, all of the teams running that will be in the top. And then you can usually like try to trace it back for like last year, if you go watch, it's like the two Lexuses at the front, then all the Ferraris, then the something, then the something, and at the back were all the Mercedes. And then
Yep.
the first pit stop cycles out, and they were like, they have different fueling capacities and all this other stuff. So the other BOP parts start to take effect. But if you just watch the first 40 minutes of the race, it's like so obvious which cars have the fastest
Didn't the
pace.
Mercedes
But
win last
now,
year?
because the GT AM cars, the GTD cars start at the back of the GT Pro cars, you'll have cars with better BOP starting behind cars with slower BOP at the beginning. That'll be more
Oh,
interesting.
okay.
Yep.
I see what okay, I see what's all right. Thank you for
I think,
contextualizing that cuz if
yeah,
I'm lost, that like I know like a good majority of the audience is lost. So I'm glad that
we're
explained that.
we're circling the drain of why endurance racing is so hard to follow. Like all of us are
It's
100%.
way more complicated than it needs to be.
100%.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
wild.
100%.
All right, Sam, are you ready to fumble through the outro?
I guess I don't know what this thing's supposed to be, but yeah, let's give it a shot.
I
Okay.
love no one never listen to the episode or an episode before you got to nail it first try. No pressure.
Yeah, no
None.
pressure. You're going to kill it. Okay. So well, I mean, look, we've talked about it, Sam. You're meant for radio. So this is your opportunity to prove it. This one and only opportunity. Mom spaghetti sweat on your sweater already. I'm going to play the outro music so you can hear the gap. And the goal is to say, I love your hair. Hope you win. Gap happens. Like there's like a couple beats of silence and then it plays out and then we're done. Right? Okay. So I'm going to play the outro
Say
for
that.
you.
Say that one more time.
So here, I'll just do a trial run. So you're saying something. Hey, thanks
And
for
the
having
music.
us on. Blah blah blah. Something like that. I love your hair, and I hope you win.
Hear that drop?
Yep.
Okay, so
All right,
that's
so you got to nail that timing.
yeah. So you say, I love your hair. Hope you win. Silence. Then the drop.
Gotcha.
And probably the ideal timing is you say win just as it gets silent, and then the drop happens.
Is there a time length from the start of the music to when the drop is?
Oh,
Nope.
he can use his spotter timer. It'll be like 6
The
seconds.
spotter timer. Oh, I'm sure that could be negotiated in there, but that would be less chaos. So we're just gonna send it. Good luck, Sam.
Well, hang on. No, no, no.
Oh,
Before
whoa,
that,
whoa, whoa,
we
what?
gotta give him a little. We gotta give him a little like send off, dude. Thanks for being on here. But it was really in like I just find all this like the inner workings of it so fascinating. So I hope our listeners enjoyed listening to that. Hopefully, before the race gives you some context to what's going on and all that. But thank you.
Yeah,
Oh, you're welcome. Really appreciate you guys having me. It's like we can sit around and talk about this stuff for hours. So really enjoyed it and love to come back anytime.
awesome. Yeah, thank you. I think this gives everyone a little bit of insight to like the inner workings of what's happening behind the scenes on Daytona. Is there any way to like listen to a spotter cam or something during the 24-hour or no?
Nope, I've been asking for years because IMSA and NASCAR are owned by the same company,
Hmm.
and because they offer it for NASCAR, why don't they offer it for IMSA? Because IndyCar also does it, but it's not there yet.
All right.
So, but yeah, I would. I've got family that have asked,
Yeah.
and they don't get to. So nope.
Can you just bring like a laptop with a webcam up on that
No,
that stand and then
no,
you just Twitch stream
He's
it?
got enough to do.
You just Twitch stream it. It'll be good. All right, Sam.
no.
Are you ready to listen for the beat and 5 car lengths
You,
and you'll be good?
you got to give me the line one more time. I already lost it.
Oh, it's I love your hair and I hope you win.
Love your hair. Hope you win.
Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Oh, I hit the button wrong. I'm hitting the button correctly this time.
Here we go. Oh, he's just
Sam's
gonna
just
listen.
waiting.
Love your hair. Hope you win.